Good evening. Welcome in to a late night episode of the Raw Prospect Podcast, episode 170. I'm going solo today. My name is Michael Ween. Emmy is absent as we have busy conflicting schedules at this time of year. He just started working a job, I believe, and I'm leaving on vacation tomorrow. So I will not be able to record until at least Monday. Where I will still be on vacation until next Wednesday, but I won't be available for a podcast. I won't be in a place to record a podcast until this coming Monday. And there's a lot going on in the sports world. Two things in particular that I want to talk about here this evening, as it's Wednesday, May 31st. Hope you guys had a fantastic Memorial Day weekend and are continuing to enjoy your year as we progress towards the month of June and get closer and closer to the end of basketball season and closer to the MLB All-Star break. And of course, football training camp will be here before you know it. But the college baseball tournament is here. Regionals start on Friday. So I want to talk about that. And then the NBA finals start here in less than 48 hours. As the Miami Heat, the second 8 seed ever to reach the NBA Finals, will go up against the number 1 seed overall, the Denver Nuggets, as Jokic has been dominant so far these playoffs. Denver's 12-3 so far in the playoffs. They have not lost at home. Miami has been a really good road team in the playoffs. So we're going to talk about our expectations for the finals here in about a 30 to 40 minute episode, and then we'll get out of here. Just want to get some content out before I leave on my vacation. All right, let's start with college baseball, because the college baseball tournament begins this weekend. 64 teams make the field, 4 teams in each regional. There are 16 regional hosts. So 16 teams based on their RPI and their metrics. The committee selects 16 teams to host a regional. And it's seeded similar to March Madness. So the number 1 overall seed, which this year would be Wake Forest, is going to host a regional, and they're going to play the winner of the number 16 seed hosts regional in the super regional. But the way it works is 4 teams in each regional. There's 16 regionals. The top 8 seeds, the top 8 national seeds, get to host both the regional, and if they win the regional, they get to host the super regional, which is a best of 3 series to advance to the College World Series. The next 8 teams, the 9 through 16 top national seeds, they might get to host a regional, but may not get to host the super regional. So again, the top 8 seeds get to host the regional and the super regional if they end up winning. But if one of those teams lose, it's possible that one of those 9 through 16 national seeds, if they win their regional, could end up hosting a regional, even though they won't automatically have home field advantage rights, if that makes sense. So once again, regionals are double elimination. There's 4 teams in each. And in order to advance out of the regional, a team must win 3 games. 3 games. Regionals run from Friday to Sunday, Friday to Sunday, but there will be some extra games on Monday, as most of these regionals go an extra game to decide, double elimination and all of that sort of stuff. So the regionals really run from this Friday to Monday, games all day. College baseball is really fun to watch, especially this time of year, and there are a ton of good teams. So that's how it all works, if you were unfamiliar. Hopefully that explanation was good enough for you to understand. Now, I want to talk about Texas baseball, where they sit, where they're going for their regional, and what I expect for Texas here moving forward as we move into the regional, where they will be going to the University of Miami, who finished runner-up in the ACC tournament, the number 9 overall national seed. If Texas, the winner of this regional, since Miami is the 9 overall national seed, will play the winner of the number 8 seed regional, hosted by Stanford. And interestingly enough, the 2 seed in that region, just as Texas is the 2 seed in this regional, to Miami's 1 seed, the 2 seed in Stanford's region, is Texas A&M. So you can kind of see what the committee did there. There is a possibility now, as Texas A&M struggled throughout the year, dealt with some injuries, but has really heated up as of late, especially in the SEC tournament. I believe they got to the semifinals of the SEC tournament, which put them as a 2 seed in the Stanford regional. There could be like a Texas-Stanford situation, as those 2 teams are going at it for the Directors Cup, the best for the award for the best overall athletic program in the country over the calendar year. Or we could see Texas versus Texas A&M. We could see Miami against Stanford. There are some interesting super regional matchups that could happen here, as the winner of the Stanford regional plays the winner of this regional. Texas had a chance to host going into last weekend, into the Big 12 tournament. They finished the season pretty hot by sweeping a really good team in West Virginia, who doesn't get to host but got in the tournament and still got a share of the Big 12 regular season championship with Texas, even though they got swept because they were, I believe, 3 games up on Texas going into that series, and they ended up tying because Texas swept that series. The Bats were awake. You talk about Dylan Campbell, Peyton Powell, Garrett Gilmette. The list goes on and on for Texas over the last month or so of the season. Pitching was pretty good, in a pretty good spot. The tough spot for Texas this year has been the bullpen. That's been a question mark all season long. And there's some injury news that's not great, which I'll get to in a minute. But the pitching had been good. Tanner Witt, who missed most of the season because he was coming back from Tommy John surgery and was supposed to be one of their aces this year, he's come back and been a pretty solid third starter. He's still getting into the swing of things, but he's looked better down the stretch as he came back, 3 or 4 weeks ago. But for Texas, here's where I feel confident, and then I'll tell you where I don't feel so confident. This team has, aside from the Big 12 tournament, which historically in college baseball, there is no correlation between conference tournament performance and actual college, NCAA tournament performance. Just as oftentimes in college basketball, conference tournament performance doesn't necessarily correlate to NCAA tournament success. It does sometimes. I mean, yes, you want to be playing your best at the right time going into the postseason, as you would in any sport, but that doesn't mean it necessarily correlates to going deep in this style of tournament if you performed well or you didn't perform well in your conference tournament. So let me just say that first. Historically, those 2 things don't correlate. Where I feel confident for Texas going into this regional, number one, their number 1 and number 2 starting pitchers as good as anyone they're going to see in this regional, if not the best. Lucas Gordon has been their ace all season. He was the Big 12 Pitcher of the Year, had a fantastic season. He's been a stable force on the mound for Texas, followed by LeBaron Johnson Jr., who's been an absolute beast after moving into the Saturday starter role. a couple weeks into the season. He's been fantastic. He's got a devastating slider, breaking ball combination along with his fastball. That combination right there, LeBron Johnson Jr. and Lucas Gordon, the 1-2 punch Friday, Saturday, is as good as anything that you can find in this particular regional and across the country. I mean, there are some better ones out there. There are some deeper pitching staffs, but that 1-2 punch right there gives me a lot of confidence that if those two guys do what they're supposed to do and do what they've done all season, that this Texas offense can do enough. And they've shown enough, even though they didn't show it in the Big 12 tournament. They can do enough and put up enough runs if those two guys pitch well to win the first two games, which will be critical. So that's the first thing. Lucas Gordon and LeBron Johnson Jr., they need to pitch well, but I feel confident that they will. They'll face Louisiana on Friday. If they win that game, and Louisiana is no pushover. They're a really good team. We'll talk a little bit about them here in a second. If they win that game, they will face the winner of Miami and Maine. Assuming that's Miami, it will be very important for Texas to win that first game against Miami on Saturday with LeBron Johnson Jr. going on the mound. It's ideal to win the first two games of the regional because then you put yourself in a position where on Sunday you're giving yourself two extra chances to beat whoever it is that's going to play them in that regional final. You have that extra chance going into Sunday. So if you were to lose Sunday, you still have another chance Monday, and you have the leverage. Winning the first two games is important, but it's not going to be easy. Miami's a really good team, and so is Louisiana. They can't be overlooked. Now, that's starting pitching, and I'm starting to feel more confident in Tanner Witt. He has some postseason experience, which gives me some confidence. He's still kind of getting reacquainted with pitching. He's made a couple starts, looked better and better. My question for Tanner Witt is just what does he look like command-wise? He can't be walking guys. That's not a good sign. But that curveball that he has is one of the best, or whatever breaking pitch it is. And if he can throw that, I'm pretty confident that if we get to a Sunday game, which I'm hoping we do, whether it's an elimination game for Texas or it's a 2-0 game and we have leverage, I'm hoping that Tanner Witt can pitch well enough, given his experience and the fact that he's gotten better over his last couple starts, to maybe win the Longhorns a regional or keep them alive if they're on the brink of elimination and get them to a Monday game. But overall, I feel pretty confident about the starting rotation for Texas, given that the 1-2 punch of Lucas Gordon and LeBron Johnson Jr. is as good as you're going to find. It was in the Big 12 this year, which was a pretty decent league. And Tanner Witt's gotten better over his last couple starts. It seems like he's sort of found his breaking pitch, which is super important for him. It's all about command on the fastball for Tanner Witt. And then secondly, I feel confident in this Texas lineup, despite a very poor showing at the Big 12 tournament. I think they're going to regroup and they're going to play well on the road. And given that you have those guys on the mound, if those guys are doing what they're doing, you just got to be able to put up enough runs. And I think they will. Dylan Campbell and Porter Brown have been dynamic at the plate, along with Peyton Powell, who's found it late in the year. This Texas lineup, Garrett Gilmet, the list goes on, right? The heart of this Texas lineup has been great. I mean, you talk about Dylan Campbell with that 35-game hit streak that he still has going, I believe, and kept going throughout the Big 12 tournament. Porter Brown has been a power guy all year, right in the middle of that lineup, often hitting cleanup. Garrett Gilmet dynamic, both at the catcher position. Really good bat for them, good power. Peyton Powell has found it as of late. There are some really good bats in this Texas lineup, and they can bat around some really good pitching. I feel pretty good about this Texas offense, although they did have that 0-2 ugly showing at the Big 12 tournament. They have the talent to go on a run in this NCAA tournament, despite a poor showing in Arlington. And as I said, there's really no correlation between conference tournament performance and NCAA tournament performance. Now, where I don't feel as confident in Texas is the fact that some recent injury news has come forth. Two of their better bullpen arms are not going to be available for this regional. One of their better bullpen arms, David Shaw, who's been very consistent all year, he's not going to be available with an elbow injury. And then Heston Tull, another valuable bullpen arm for this Texas team, is not going to be available because I believe a back injury or something along those lines. So David Shaw's injury could be season ending. I mean, those elbow injuries, you don't want to mess with that. I don't know what it is exactly yet, but my suspicion is it's not great. It's not going to be good news for Texas, but he is out for this regional nevertheless. So given those two arms, those very two important bullpen arms, who have been two of the better bullpen arms and more reliable bullpen arms for Texas this season, there needs to be some unsung heroes in this bullpen. They're going to need to find success in the bullpen with some of these unexperienced pitchers that they have in the bullpen pitching for the first time in the postseason. It's going to need to happen if Texas wants to get itself not only out of this regional, but, going to where Texas baseball belongs historically, and that's Omaha. If you want to get all the way to Omaha once again for the third time in 4 years, you have to have a lockdown bullpen, as some of these other teams do. And I just don't feel really confident with those two arms down, not available for the regional, that Texas has that. So they're going to need length from Lucas Gordon. They're going to need some length from Leber and Johnson Jr., which they can get. They can get that. But yes, it's a tough situation right now in the Texas bullpen. And that's what's holding me back from saying with confidence that Texas is going to win this regional, or that Texas is going to go any further than this regional if they win it. So it's a little bit of a different feel than it was about 2 weeks ago when things were good. They just swept West Virginia and the bullpen was healthy and looking a lot better. Now with those injuries, it's a little tough, but we'll see. You never know. It's baseball. We will see what happens. Before we move on, I want to talk about a little bit about two of these other teams in this regional. No disrespect to Maine. I'm sure they're a fantastic team. There's a reason they're in the field. I mean, you're a top 64 team in college baseball out of like 364 teams. They won their conference. They led their conference in home runs and slugging. They have a couple really good hitters. Jeremiah Jenkins, 378 average, 20 home runs, and 75 RBIs. They have some really good hitters in the middle of that lineup, which is what you want. They have some good pitching. So we'll see where it goes with Maine. I'm interested to see them face Miami. Maybe there could be an upset there. But let's talk about Miami. Really dangerous team, especially down the stretch. 40-19. They've been arguably the ACC's most consistent team throughout the season, aside from the number 1 overall national seed, Wake Forest. And they're hosting a regional for the second year in a row. They're looking for a better result, though, as last year they lost their regional to the eventual national champion, Ole Miss, who won the national championship last year. They got a dangerous lineup led by their future first-round pick, Yohandy Morales. This is a name you need to watch if you're going to be watching this regional. He plays third base, great glove, and he's hitting, listen to this, 405 for the season, 13 doubles, 16 homers, and 61 RBIs. They also have CJ Kafis, 351, 13 home runs, and their freshman infielder, Blake Sire, 303, 16 home runs, and 60 RBIs. The list goes on and on. They hit for power, they hit for average. They have dangerous bats up and down this lineup, and it's going to require some good pitching from Texas and some smart pitching from Texas if they want to beat Miami, maybe not only once, but twice to get out of this regional. So Miami's a really good team, and the rotation is no slouch either. They're actually led by their bullpen. They have one of the better closers in the game of college baseball. Andrew Walters is his name. He's got a 1.36 career ERA in 99 innings. That's over 70 appearances, and he hasn't given up more than one earned run in an outing since June of last year. So if you're Texas, you want to get to this Miami pitching staff anyhow, any means necessary before they bring that guy in the game, because there's a good chance that if they bring that guy in the game and they're up by one or more runs, you could be dead meat by that time, given his history and his performance over the past 2 years. So really good starting rotation. I think, Gage Zeal is the ace of the rotation, but I think Texas may have the slight edge there based on what Lucas Gordon and LeBron Johnson Jr. have done in their talent level. But ultimately, what this is going to come down to for Texas is, number one, can they replicate their offensive success from the which offensive team shows up, basically, is what I'm trying to say. The one over the last month of the regular season, or the one that we saw in Arlington. And I'm hoping it's going to be the one that we saw at the end of the regular season, and I believe we can get that. And then number two, there's got to be an unsung hero or two in the bullpen. They're going to have to get something consistent out of this bullpen, not only to win this regional, but to go any further. They just have to. So the injuries suck, but you really can't do anything about that. And they're at a terrible time, but you just gotta find a way. And look, Texas baseball in its history, there's a reason that Texas baseball, this program, has made 62 NCAA tournaments and 38 College World Series appearances in Omaha. That's the most by far of any college baseball program there is. So, and guess what? Miami is actually second on that list with 25. So Texas has 13 more College World Series appearances in their history and more college baseball tournament appearances than anyone else in the history of college baseball. So if any program can figure it out, it'd be Texas. But Miami's tough. Louisiana's tough. They're not to be slept on either. So I will be definitely paying attention to this regional, and I'm hoping for the best for Texas. Before we move on for the next 5-ish minutes, let's acknowledge what we have here in these other regionals. I want to talk about this more, but I'm just not going to have the time. But we covered what we really needed to cover, which was the Coral Gables regional. I'll try to cover some others here. The number one overall seed, Wake Forest. Best team all year. Really consistent. Led by a stellar pitching staff. The lowest starting pitching ERA. Actually, the lowest pitching staff ERA in the country, which is almost a full run better than the next Power 5 team, which is Tennessee. They're led by Rhett Lauder, a name you're going to want to know if you're watching Wake Forest, as you're going to want to watch them. They're a really fun team to watch. Back-to-back ACC Pitcher of the Year. He's the ace of their staff. And then they follow that up with Josh Hartle and Seth Keener, who are both in the top 15 in the country in terms of ERA, both with sub 2.5 ERAs. So this pitching staff is stellar. All three of those guys, awesome. It's going to be hard to match up with for any of these other teams. Pretty good bullpen, top 25 in the country. They got two capable closers, Michael Massey and Camden Manassi. And their lineup, the middle of their lineup, boasts two of the best hitters in college baseball. But up and down this lineup, they can hit, they can pitch. They are just overall a well-rounded team. They're the best team so far. But get this, the number one overall seed in the college baseball tournament hasn't won the national championship or the College World Series, for that matter, in 24 years. So just putting that out there. I'm not saying that Wake Forest will or will not win the national championship, but with their talent, their pitching staff, which is as good as anything you're going to see in this tournament, they definitely have a chance. Now, Maryland is the 2 seed. They won the Big Ten for the second year in a row. They were second in home runs this year, so they can really slug. They're led by Nick LaRusso, who had 99 RBIs. They can hit, but their pitching has been inconsistent, so that's going to be something to watch for Maryland. They're going to need to pitch well, especially to this powerful Wake Forest team, if they want to get out of this regional. So that's the number 1 seed. That's the Winston-Salem regional, as it'll be hosted at Wake Forest. Get this, they're actually, of the 16 hosts, 8 of them are from the SEC. Now, whether or not I agree with that, I don't know, but the SEC, by far and away, once again, was the best conference in college baseball. And next year, well, actually not next year, but the year after, they're going to be adding Oklahoma, who was last year's national runner-up, as they lost to Ole Miss, and then Texas, who has the history and prestige of one of the better college baseball programs in the entire country. So the SEC is only going to get better here in a couple of years. But Florida in the Gainesville Regional, the number 2 overall seed, they were the SEC regular season champions, 44-14, 20-10 in the SEC, which is really good. And they were really good at home, which is a good sign because they're going to be playing this regional at home, 30-6 at home. So beating this Gators team is going to be a tall task. They have a really good rotation, as you'll see with most of these teams. Brandon Sproat and Hurston Waldrep. Give credit to College Baseball Central for all these notes and stats. Really good rotation, and their offense is one of the more dynamic offenses in college baseball. They actually have 6 players with double-digit home runs. They can slug. They hit for average. They had series wins against Miami, who's the number 9 national seed. Kentucky, which I believe is the number 12 or 13 national seed. Tennessee, who's a really good team, one of the top 2 seeds. Auburn, who's a national host. Alabama, who's a national host. They swept Vanderbilt, who's a national host. The Gators are really, 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 really good, and they're likely going to be playing this regional and the super regional on their home field. So I expect Florida, from what I've seen on the highlights and from what the overall body of work shows, to likely maybe make an appearance at the College World Series if I had to make any predictions. But there are some good teams in their regional. Texas Tech, they were on the bubble, but they had a really good Big 12 tournament. Gavin Cash is one of the better hitters in college baseball, so they're certainly a team that's heated up as of late to keep an eye on. And then UConn, who was the Big East regular season champion, 22nd in the RPI, which means they're basically a top 25 team in college baseball in some respects. They're not a pushover either, but Florida is really, really good. Host number 3 is going to be Fayetteville, Arkansas, 41-16, the SEC regular season champions, as I believe they shared it with the Gators. They shared the regular season SEC title with Florida. They battled through injury and adversity all year, but Arkansas is one of those programs. They just figure it out. They're going to be hosting. TCU is in their regional. They're hot, coming off winning the Big 12 conference tournament. They got some really good bats in their lineup as Texas faced them earlier this year. They looked really impressive, especially down the stretch. So that'll certainly be no easy task for Arkansas. But, Hagen Smith for Arkansas. Texas faced them in one of the first games of the season in Arlington to open up the year, and he was awesome, and he continues to be. They also have Brady Tigert, Gage Wood. Arkansas is really good, but TCU and Arizona could challenge for sure. Clemson's going to host. They won the ACC tournament. Really good team. They started 17-14, but they finished over the last 29 games, including the ACC tournament. They're 26-3, and they're currently on a 16-game winning streak. They're a really good team, one of the more well-balanced teams in the ACC. Earn that spot, but they get Tennessee in their regional. A team that had 16 wins in the SEC over the course of the season. They're a really good team. They returned some of the talent they had last year, but they also lost a lot of the talent they had last year when they were actually the number 1 overall seed. But they're no slouch as the 2 seed in that region. LSU, who was the preseason number 1 unanimously to start the year. They finished second in the SEC West. But they have arguably the best pitching staff in the country. Paul Skeens is the guy that you're going to want to watch there. And Dylan Cruz is one of the best players in college baseball, as he won SEC Player of the Year. So I'd look out for LSU as a team that could potentially make a run. Vanderbilt, they're a staple in college baseball. They're hosting as the number 6 overall seed. Virginia, they've been a powerhouse in the ACC as well. They're going to host a regional. They rank 10th in the RPI, 45-12 on the season. They're hot as well. 10 of their last 11 they've won. They're actually the only team in the country to rank top 10 in both batting average and pitching staff ERA. They're first in batting average, and they're 7th in pitching staff ERA. They're headlined by Kyle Teal and Jake Gedloff in that lineup. They're effective. They hit for average. They hit for power. Virginia is going to be a really fun team to watch. But in their regional, they get Eastern Carolina and last year's national runner-up, Oklahoma. So they still got to come ready to play. And then the number 8 national seed, we won't go any further than this, is Stanford. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, Texas will play the winner of this regional if they advance out of their regional. It could be Stanford. It could be A&M. It could even be Cal State Fullerton, who won the Big West, or San Jose State. These are teams that Texas saw this season. So at least if Texas were to advance, they would have some familiarity with some of these teams that could possibly advance out of this regional. Texas A&M and Texas actually played a midweek series earlier in the season. They split. It was 2 games. I believe A&M won at Texas, and Texas won at A&M. But since A&M would have beaten Stanford to get out of their regional, and Stanford's the higher seed than Texas host, which is Miami. If that super regional were to happen, A&M would actually be the host for that. So that's just something to keep an eye on. That's the way it works. But yeah, we could go all day. I'd love to talk more about this, but Emmy and I'm sure we'll be back on Monday or Tuesday to sort of recap the things that we saw in the regional and hopefully do a full preview of the super regionals, which are really fun. 16 teams advance out of the 16 regionals with 4 teams each. Remember, it's double elimination. The regionals run Friday through Monday. They're really fun games to watch. It's a little different than Major League Baseball, but some of these guys are going to be future stars in Major League Baseball. So keep an eye out. You can go to collegebaseballcentral.net and read more on these teams. So thank you to collegebaseballcentral.net. But again, Texas, I'm pretty confident about the offense, pretty confident about the starting pitching, not so confident about the bullpen. And that's what's holding me back from saying that Texas will definitely win this regional or even advance further than that if they get out of the regional. Okay. We can talk a little bit about the NBA Finals, and I can give you my prognosis, my prediction. When we last talked NBA, both conference finals series were 3-0. And Emmy and I came on, and we basically predicted 2 sweeps. Now, one of those sweeps did happen. The Nuggets swept the Lakers. The Lakers put up a good fight in Game 3 and Game 4, but Jokic and Jamal Murray just proved too much. That's the end of the story. I mean, that Nuggets offense all postseason long, whether it's been Jokic, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon has been a steady presence for them offensively. The guys off the bench like Bruce Brown and, who's the guy that they have? Gosh, I'm blanking. But they've gotten contributions from everywhere. Sorry, it's late. It's 12:48 a.m. The Nuggets, I mean, they're a powerhouse, right? They swept the Lakers. They've had a decent amount of time off now. But that Eastern Conference Finals series, when we came on this podcast, I don't know when it was, a week and a half ago, when the series was 3-0. We sort of said that the Celtics had been deflated mentally. That Game 3 embarrassment, and we're about to talk about another embarrassment, which was Game 7, but the Game 3 embarrassment, the Game 3 beatdown, the first game in Miami after Miami won the first 2 games in Boston, as they've been a pretty good road team here in the postseason, which is why they're here. They wouldn't be here as an 8 seed in the finals if they weren't a good road team or hadn't been a good road team, because they're required to win road games every series if they want to win the series. That's self-explanatory. We came in and we said Miami's beating them up physically, and they're just beating them. It's a mental game. Spoelstra largely outcoached Boston's coach, Joe Mazzulla. Miami was just kicking them in the ass from all angles. Whether that was coaching, adjustments, physicality, hustle, shooting, whatever it was, late game execution, Miami was beating them in all aspects. But Boston ended up rallying and winning 3 straight. And get this, before this year, Still, no team had ever come back from a 3-0 deficit, 3-0 series deficit in NBA playoff history. Teams were actually 150-0 after leading 3-0 in the series. There only had been, before this year, 4 or 5 instances where a team that goes down 3-0 had even forced a game 7. And I think Boston became the 5th or the 6th after a crazy game 6 ending where Derek White got the rebound off a miss from Marcus Smart, put it back in. The awareness that took from Derek White, who was one of the more consistent Boston Celtics players over the course of these playoffs, and I give him a ton of credit, not only because he was a former Spur, but just because of his basketball IQ, and the hustle and the defense that he provided this Boston team, along with some of the shot making and perimeter shot making that he provided and has provided over the past 2 seasons, just playing steady in his role. The Boston Celtics wouldn't have gotten to this point without Derek White, I don't believe, in my opinion. He deserves a lot of credit for what he did, but that play and that ending to that game after Miami was up by like double digits going into the fourth quarter, I believe that was something else. It had been a long time since I can recall seeing something like that in an NBA playoff game. I mean, things that come to mind are the Kawhi Raptors shot against the Sixers a couple years ago in that title run. I can, of course, remember the Kyrie shot in the finals. That's an obvious one. There are some ones out there, the Dame Lillard ones, but that was just absolutely crazy because the last thing you probably expected in that situation, once Marcus Smart put up that 3-pointer and it clanked off the rim, was for Derek White to come racing from the baseline and to put it back up and in with like a couple tenths of a second left. Absolutely stunning ending and stunning play to force a game 7. And after that, you can only imagine what the Miami Heat fans were feeling. They were that close to ending it in 6. But Derek White, what he has done, what he did throughout this series, being one of Boston's most consistent performers on a night in, night out basis, it can't be discredited or gone without acknowledgement. So that's really my first point. I think Derek White, along with some good performances from Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, some better performances, better than we saw in the first 3 games of the series. Grant Williams got some more minutes. He made some shots, but didn't really give them enough in game 7. Horford was Horford. I mean, didn't really shoot well in this series, but he was doing Horford things at times. Robert Williams, it's hard to say if that guy's ever like 100% healthy or not, but he was a factor at times. But this game 7, man, it was Miami. I mean, I think rather than come on here and just crush Boston, which I could do, but I'm not going to, even though if you're Jaylen Brown, I mean, you can't go 8 turnovers in a game 7. It's just Boston. My complaint with Boston all season, and this is the last thing I'll say on Boston, was late game execution. Can I trust them? And sloppiness offensively. And it seemed like they also lacked variety in what they were trying to do offensively. It was often set a high screen and roll, kick it out for 3, or drive to the basket and try to make something happen, draw a foul. But they weren't converting those looks a lot of the time. And when they were just trading buckets with Miami most of the time because they could not, for whatever reason, get stops. They were getting beat on backdoor type action. getting beat on the perimeter, having a hard time closing out on threes. Miami was getting to their spots and knocking down their shots. And at the end of the day, the adjustment to go to his own defense when needed, as Boston only scored 19 points on 34 possessions in game 7, where Miami played his own defense as they adjusted in like games 2 and 3 and did the same thing. The adjustments in game by Spoelstra to go to the zone defense and really stifle this Boston offense, which struggled to figure it out, this zone defense, and really never did this entire series, was awesome. Jimmy Butler had another great game, 28 points in the game 7. He outplayed both Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown in this game 7. And Caleb Martin, man. Miami had 7. Well, I don't think all 7 undrafted players played in this series, or at least consistently. But their undrafted players averaged 56 points per game in the Eastern Conference Finals. And that's just, it's a credit to their brain trust, Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra, that entire front office, the coaching staff. That's what separates them, in my opinion. That's why Eric Spoelstra has this team going to its 7th NBA Finals appearance since 2006. Because they get the most out of what they have. Everyone doubted this team, including myself, including Emmy, including everyone that I listened to on podcasts, everyone that I watched on TV. And when you looked at the overall body of work and the roster and the numbers coming into the playoffs, and you watched that first playing game against the Atlanta Hawks, there was good reason to have some doubts about what Miami could do in these playoffs. But once again, Eric Spoelstra's in-game adjustments, what they got out of their undrafted players, Max Strus knocking down big shots. Gabe Vincent was absolutely fantastic as a shot creator in this series. Boston just had no answers for him at times. Duncan Robinson played a role, as he finds a way to do pretty consistently. And then, running the offense through Caleb Martin, who was actually cut by Charlotte, I believe, in 2021. And then I think it was Jimmy Butler and some other players convinced the Heat. Someone convinced the Heat to sign Caleb Martin. And little did they know that he would be one of the biggest reasons that they would win a Game 7 in Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals, to send them to the finals. The Heat were literally running offense through this guy, and he was absolutely fantastic. He averaged more points per game in this series than both Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Was absolutely fantastic as a shot creator and a playmaker. Made the smart plays, didn't turn the ball over. Shot 50. I believe I have the stats. Let me just find them real fast. Caleb Martin. No. 19.3 points per game in the series. Shot 60% from the field. 22 of 45 from 3. That's 49% from 3-point range. Unbelievable. He was a huge factor. So their in-game adjustments, what they got from their undrafted players, Jimmy Butler's performance when it matters the most, Bam Adebayo's presence on the court as both a playmaker, a rebounder, and a scorer at times. Miami is just a well-rounded, smart basketball team, and they're a pain in the fucking ass to play. So it'll be interesting to see how they match up with Denver. I have been one to discredit Miami series after series as we come on here and make predictions each round here in these playoffs. Still really haven't fully believed, but at this point, it's getting hard not to. It feels like in some ways this team might be a team of destiny, given that they almost, I don't want to say choked away, but they almost gave up a 3-0 lead. In fact, they did give up a 3-0 lead. Went all the way to a game 7 and won again in Boston and shot the ball fantastic. They're going to have to continue to shoot well, though. They're going to have to get those same contributions from Caleb Martin and Max Strus and Gabe Vincent if they want to beat Denver, who's a totally different beast. I have the feeling sometimes, as much rest as Denver's gotten, there can be reason to worry because of rust, but I just don't believe as well as Denver's played at home in these playoffs. They're 8-0 at home in the playoffs. That they're going to be all that rusty. And teams with this much rest going into a series, a new series, I believe are 8-1 in game ones with as much rest as Denver has. Jokic has been a beast. I expect him to continue that. The Heat, if anyone can figure out Jokic, it might be Eric Spoelstra with some of the defensive adjustments and weird things the Heat can do defensively. They're going to need Bam Adebayo to stay out of foul trouble because they have to have a presence, a big presence in the paint. Keep Jokic out of the paint, which is going to be tough, but they're going to have to find some way to contain him. I don't know if that can be done, which is why I'm going to pick Denver to win this series. Jamal Murray continues to be absolutely fantastic. What he did in the conference finals with like putting up 30 points in a quarter and continuing to be an absolute star next to Jokic has been fantastic. Michael Porter Jr., Bruce Brown does the little things coming off the bench. Aaron Gordon continues to be a presence offensively and defensively. He's been pretty versatile defensively in these playoffs. I don't want to fully discredit Miami. I know it's hard to win in Denver. The elevation is tough. Miami's been a good road team, though, in these playoffs. I think that Miami will get 2. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt because of how well they've played in these playoffs, how good of a coach Eric Spoelstra is, how much experience they actually have in the finals, given that Jimmy Butler and some of these other players, I believe, were here a couple of years ago in the bubble. I think with how well they're shooting the ball, if that continues, they can definitely get 2 games off of Denver. I just don't think they have enough firepower to go toe-to-toe with Jokic, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, and everyone else, Michael Porter Jr., Bruce Brown, the little things he does. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is another guy that gives them defense, perimeter shooting, versatility, switchability. I hate that I'm doubting Miami once again. I think it's going to be a really good series. I think Miami is a pain in the ass to play, and Denver better be ready. They better not walk into game 1 sleeping. And I think even though Michael Malone has proven to be a fantastic coach, I'd give Spoelstra the edge and the benefit of the doubt in a cat and mouse type head coaching adjustment game, which I believe will come into play at some point in the series. Miami's been good on the road. They have Jimmy Butler, who's a big-time performer in these type of spots, time after time after time. They have Bam Adebayo. They have these undrafted players that are extremely confident and have a chip on their shoulder right now. They make adjustments. They're smart. They don't turn the basketball over. It's just going to be, are the finals too big of a stage for some of these guys? But at the end of the day, I don't think Jokic can be stopped. And I think Denver's going to win their first title. I think it's good for the NBA. Now, people are going to say, well, they beat 2 8 seeds on their way to the finals, and they I only had to play a 4 and a 7 seed in between that, and it's not the toughest road, but hey, Denver earned this. They were the best team in the regular season, and sometimes when you're the 1 seed and you're as good as Denver is, you get breaks in your favor. It's not Denver's fault. And they're just beating up on who they play. And at the end of the day, it's a ring. I think Denver's going to win their first NBA championship for those reasons. So, yeah, guys, thank you once again for joining me, to whoever the one person is that is watching. Thank you very much. College baseball regionals, be sure to keep up with that going on this weekend. We previewed Texas's regional, our expectations for Texas, and some of the other top national seeds that you need to be watching, some of the nice players. Didn't cover it all, but we just don't have time for that. And then I'm giving you my finals prediction, which is Denver. The Denver Nuggets will beat the Miami Heat in 6 games. I'm giving the Heat some benefit of the doubt given their performance up until this point. I think they will get a game or two for sure, for the reasons that I mentioned. Thank you for joining me. I'm leaving on vacation tomorrow, so Emmy will probably come on and maybe do a solo episode, maybe get someone on and talk about the NBA, maybe some other topics with a guest. And then I'm guessing Emmy and I will be back at the earliest Sunday together, and probably Monday, most likely Monday or Tuesday. So keep an eye out for that. We got a bunch more content coming here on the Raw Prospect Podcast channel. You can get our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. We also have a Patreon, so go check that out. Like and subscribe to our channel. Share it with your friends. And I guess just like the college baseball regular season and just like the NBA playoffs, the Boston Celtics season, and the Los Angeles Lakers season, we are gone. Peace out. Enjoy the regionals. Hook 'em.